Good evening and welcome to KTN Live. My name is James Smart. Allow me to introduce my panel tonight. And I'll start off with the far off John Nyongese, communication expert.
Hi,
Karibu sana.
Hi, James.
Kibe Mungai, a regular city lawyer. Karibu sana.
Good to be here.
And Ekuru Okot, lawyer. Karibu sana.
Thank you.
And finally, Moses Kuria. Or should I say Honorable Moses Kuria?
Thank you.
Communication expert. Karibu sana. Gentlemen, tonight we're here because of the events in the last few weeks and days. We have a president-elect, we've gone through an election, and we have issues to do with state powers or not state powers, or what the president-elect can do or not do. We want to discuss transitions, what a government, incoming government is able to do, an outgoing government is able to do. We want to clear the distinctions, the legality around it, and the communication, because it's talking to Kenyans, 40 million Kenyans. Let me start with the legal part of it. Kibe Mugai, we've seen this government, an incoming government, if you like. We've seen the setup, we've seen the security briefings. Anything wrong with that?
Absolutely none. The position of the president-elect is a constitutional position. The moment the IEBC declares that a person has been duly elected as president of Kenya, he becomes president-elect pending the swearing-in ceremony and any other issue like such as petitions that may be filed in between. And the law, the Assumption of Office Act, requires that the committee dealing with the issues of the assumption of office of president, that they will provide adequate security to the president-elect. And the president-elect is a president, save that he's not been sworn in.
Nothing wrong with that. Ekuru, my motivation to have you tonight is that you're involved in the crafting of the constitution. What is the spirit?
Well, the spirit is that, of course, if you are elected president, you don't need to be overzealous about the fact that you've been elected. And I think a critical provision in the constitution is that you must assume office to begin or to be seen to be exercising functions of a president. I think what we have seen in the last 1 week is probably not gone down with many people, because you see the president-elect and his deputy, I think, traversing the country or painting the assumption that they are already in office and exercising certain powers. I think for me, there is nothing wrong per se with that, but I think it would have been, because, you know, we are in a very delicate moment as a country. We are still transitioning to this new order in terms of even the election. The constitution requires that, you know, until you assume office, you know, that's when maybe you can begin to do certain things. You can already see the debate around whether the cabinet should vacate offices and stuff like that. I think there's a bit of exaggeration. There's a bit of personalization. I see a bit of politicization. It shouldn't be like that. I think there's a certain way in which things must be done in accordance with the law. I think it will raise the temperatures. Right now we are seeing a lot of excitement, people thinking that, you know, some quarters are assuming too much power. Some people are already being treated like you're rejects, you know, you have no say. I think that for me is heightening tensions in the country unnecessarily. I think if we all abided by the spirit of the constitution and even the letter of it, I think we wouldn't see this kind of almost emerging controversy, if I can say, or just say over-exaggeration.
Over-exaggeration. Just before I bring in the communication bit with us, John and Moses, let's bring up to speed with exactly what we're talking about. Here's a story that we filed for you last week on just exactly what happened on the security angle of it, just to bring us up to speed. Take a look at this.
When Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta walked into Bomas of Kenya to officially pick up his nomination certificate as Kenya's 4th president-elect, the Jubilee coalition leader drove out of Bomas, noting the company of his politicians, but in a government vehicle and a security ring thrown around him. Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta since then has been referred to among security circles as Hotel Echo 2, a code name for His Excellency 2. With President Kibaki still in office, he still maintains the Hotel Echo title for now. Uhuru Kenyatta now has more than 30 police officers, led by a deputy presidential escort commander drawn from the dreaded Reke company of the General Service Unit. Uhuru Muigai's cell phones and those of his deputy William Ruto have been replaced with new and safer ones. those who expect calls from the president-elect might be in for a big surprise. Security agents have their way when it comes to protecting the head of state. Their word on matters security is final. If Uhuru Kenyatta's candidature fails to be challenged by the court, the man will automatically become the property of the state. Security agencies will make decisions the president at times will not agree with, but because of national security, he has to give in to.
Ndugu, habari yako? Salama. Karibuni. Jemedari. Karibu sana. Asante. Katibu, habari yako? Salama. Asante. How are you? Timayo. God bless you.
The president will receive security briefs from the head of the civil service, who every evening will summon these three men to his office: the Director General of the National Intelligence Service, Major General Michael Gishangi, the Chief of Defense Forces, General Julius Karangi, and the Inspector General of Police, David Kimaiyo. Messages will be relayed to the president through a secure line and at times in person. The president will not in the near future ride openly while in a presidential motorcade or visit his favorite restaurant. The state shall choose for him. In any presidential motorcade, the president's driver will strictly follow a vehicle directly ahead of him. No deviation whatsoever. The plan is simple. If anything was to happen to the president, then it will happen first to the vehicle in front of the official limousine. Until Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta is sworn in, he will not be referred to as the Commander-in-Chief of Kenya's Armed Forces. That title means a totally new thing for the head of state. The country's security and safety of 40 million Kenyans will squarely lie on his shoulders.
Alright, that's where we are, and let's bring the communication angle of it. Moses, anything wrong with that?
Well, I think I'm encouraged that my brother here, who was actually one of the fathers of the Constitution, does not point to anything that is unconstitutional or illegal about, what is happening. So, in my opinion, it's a question of the controversy is about catching feelings, and it's normal that people catch feelings before they get used to it. So, I see this as a psychological, normal human behavior, and it's a question of time before people get used to it. So I don't see a big deal.
Just a small problem. John, are you catching feelings?
No. I think Moses is underplaying an issue that is actually a very sensitive issue. The problem here around what has been going on in the last 2 weeks is that government communications to its citizens has actually failed, or is actually flawed. In this particular sense, you see, if we were to go to another reference point, like let's say the US, they have a transition act in which the very first line says there shall be programs, there shall be structures, there shall be a set of activities which the public shall be educated on, both campaigns shall be educated on, the press shall be educated on. Now, there's a failure of communication here in the sense of one of the things citizens needed to understand is immediately IBC declares a winner, or whether you challenge the results or not, you will see the following things. We will do the following things. You'll see this, you will see this, and you'll see this. And the thing is, in relation to the person who's been declared by the IBC, his relationship to government shall be this, to the civil service shall be this, to the security forces shall be this, to foreign governments shall be this. And you know why actually Ekuru and company crafted a constitution that placed a time limit on a process of transition, 14 days, 21 days? It's because there was a spirit behind it. To usher in a transition, what you need to do is first elect. If that election is challenged, go to a petition. When the petition is resolved, swear in or go back to an election. Now, the problem with the communication that has been happening this week and last week has been an overzealous effort, almost disregarding the fact that there's a petition happening. Accept this is exactly what should happen. I think what should have happened with regard to government communication would have been, look, we will do this. This particular person shall be protected like this, shall receive the following briefs. We have a petition process. We as government haven't dropped the ball. We still have a government that exists and is called the coalition government. after you are done with the court process, the following things are going to happen. None of that communication is happening. You're seeing things, and then government comes to explain later, this is what happened because of ABCD.
Kibe, you've given me the letter of the Constitution. In your mind, what's the spirit of the Constitution in regards to handing over power and transition?
I think when you want to relate the law and the spirit, it is also important to say why, despite the fact that the law is very clear on these particular issues, are we still hearing issues around it? The reason, if we may face it, is the fact that, as it were, there is a third principle who is emerging. Because over the last 4 or 5 years, we've been accustomed to the notion that there are two principles. Then suddenly something that appears like a third principle in town suddenly appears. Now that in my mind, the petition would not be a big issue, and even the issues of the spirit. Assuming now when we get to 2017 or 2018, since there will be a president-elect, and the issues of the principal who is a prime minister would have been long buried, these issues are not going to be there, because that other president, it would be clear that would be an incumbent, a president under temporary incumbency. There is what he can do, what he cannot be able to do, and therefore for me, what is causing a lot of discomfort really has more to do with the fact that a house that was already crowded as regards its headship, there is suddenly a third head in the same house. I believe that's the main issue.
Is that so?
I wouldn't be that simplistic. I've done law and I've read law in so many levels. You cannot undermine the spirit in the making of any legislation. There is always the philosophy and the reason behind why a certain law comes into being, or why we talk of a transition, why we talk of a constitution. First of all, there is nothing called third principle in our current constitutional and legal setup. I don't know where Kibe is getting that from.
There is actually no notion of two principles.
No, there is actually
that is Kofi Annan.
No.
But
There is actually
as a political reality.
I'm assuming that Kibe Mungai has had occasion to refresh his memory on the National Accord and Reconciliation Act and the old constitution. And if you look at section 12 of the 6th schedule to this constitution, it is so clear that the people occupying the office of president and prime minister shall remain in office, up to the next general election. That's what it says. It also talks about the people currently being described as ministers or whatever the case may be, the government shall remain so until the next general election. So that is the spirit. The spirit is that you do not usher in a new order by creating disorder. And therefore you cannot throw away the quorum or the mechanism within which you transition just because of what Kibe described as a third principle. I think for me that's missing the point. All I'm saying is this: this country has certain rules and regulations on how we do things. We must behave ourselves in a certain way. There's nothing wrong with somebody winning an election, but let's not muddy the waters because all of a sudden we think that there's emergence of a third principle. It's completely misplaced, it's not legal, it's not constitutional in our context. And I think for me, we run the risk of just politicizing our own rules of engagement, unnecessarily, I must add.
Moses, I must bring you to this conversation. You belong to the side that has won right now, claims to have won.
Absolutely.
And he is happy, of course.
And you're happy. Are you being overzealous? Are you muddying the waters too much, Moses, for us? So that the people who feel that they're challenging this feel, listen, we can't work with Moses anymore because he's just celebrating on the rooftops.
I mean, you see, the problem with us, there's nothing that we ever do right in the eyes of people like Ekuru. Yeah, because what have we done? I mean, the Prime Minister has had a motto.
I haven't accused anybody of doing anything
wrong.
wrong.
First of all, it's not within our DNA to over-enjoy trappings. You know us very well. It's not within our DNA to enjoy, some of those trappings. All we are saying
are you
is...
sure they're not enjoying those
trappings? No. Let's look at it this way.
The trappings of what?
Yes.
One man was declared by IEBC to be the winner of the presidential election.
By the way, we have no quarrel with that.
The Constitution of Kenya provides for a petition process.
Yes.
But the Constitution of Kenya does not deconstruct the Kenyan state within the period of the petition. Yeah? So we still have a country. We still have an economy. Our children are still going to school. And
we still have a government.
We still have a
That's an
government.
important thing.
All we are saying is
We still have a
that we
government.
need to show
Absolutely.
that whichever way it goes, God willing, if our victory is actually endorsed by the court, that we need to provide a sense of continuity for this country.
But the question,
Take it for example.
the question, hang on, I'm going to give you a opportunity to answer, but the question is, what if the court does not validate that will?
I'm going to answer that.
Well, we have to be careful because this matter is before court, so we are not going to
we
discuss
cannot
the
discuss
merits
much the merits
and the demerits of
But
this
what
case.
we are saying is,
Yeah.
the court can only rule in two ways: in our favor, yeah, in which way we continue with what is calling of
The trappings of power.
or against us, in which case we pack our bags and we go back to the people, which is what we know best, yeah, and we go and ask for votes again. And the president-elect has been very clear that if the court does not rule in our favor, we are still going to go back there, campaign with even more vigor, and we win even more votes. All we are saying is that we cannot have a lacuna. We cannot have a gap in this country. Look at our economy. The stock market has been very level since the election. Compare that with 2008.
Well,
Shouldn't we thank God for that? Look at the money markets, the exchange rate around 85 shillings all this time. Why? Because we have shown clearly, one, we have a government, two, we are ready for transition, and three, that we follow the rule of law.
But I think the subject of this conversation is a bit much more serious than Moses is putting it. See, when this gentleman crafted a constitution and put time frames on something, there was a reason. Remember previous petitions which will last a year or so?
Yeah.
There was a reason. Get over this matter within this period of time, 14 days or 21 days. Now, what they accepted is that two things that happen in order to get a president sworn in. There's an election. If that election is challenged, there is a petition, and then it's either reaffirmed or invalidated. The problem with what is happening right now is that the overzealousness and the fact that suddenly the president-elect, as by law, what he is supposed to do or not do is not clear. So we have a situation where we have a civil service, a security force, foreign governments suddenly being ushered into all these delegations, and they're not actually presenting credentials because they should present it to the previous to the sitting government. Then we head into an issue where this kind of signals are starting to suggest that the court process is a sideshow. It's not. It's part, and that's why they crafted a constitution that says, until this matter is dispensed with, there shall be no swearing in. Now, it is such a short period to resolve a matter, you'd wonder why there's such a big rush to actually almost suggest that the coalition government has been dissolved. For me, from a communication point of view, we are confusing the public and we're communicating wrong signals. And wrong signals actually to both bases, to both CORD and to both Jubilee. Because they're still a part of the process that is supposed to be completed before we actually conduct a swearing. Let me finish, Moses. The problem with this, while that is seen as possibly hindering a reaction that might be negative, you also forget that these same conflicting signals are also affecting Jubilee as a base. Because basically, if the court overturns this thing, how will Jubilee react? And if you play this script out, almost saying that it's a fait accompli and this is a sideshow, how will court react? So in a way, the way this process is being conducted and what is being communicated to the public is actually, to me, the source of the security threat, if you ask me. Kenyans are not being communicated to.
Before Korea comes,
Yes.
I just want to, I don't want to lose Moses. Moses made a very important point that we should not create a vacuum.
Yes.
But what is it that we have seen being communicated out there? We've heard that some people must vacate office by due date. Now, for me, that's very wrong. That is not anywhere in our constitution. The normal practice is that until people come and take over those offices, because even right now as we speak, we know that Kibaki cannot make any substantive appointment. I doubt he can even convene a cabinet as it is. And even if you were to convene, from what we have already had out there, it will put us in a very awkward situation. We know that even if Uhuru, the president-elect, were today to present his cabinet, who will approve that cabinet? Because he himself has not assumed office because you can only assume office upon taking the oath of office as prescribed in the Constitution. So this kind of communication, this kind of dialogue, for me, I think that's what I'm saying, it muddies the waters, because until you have a cabinet that the president himself has presented, cabinet secretaries, principal secretaries, to be approved by parliament. We don't even have a parliament to approve whatever appointment. So when people start giving us these signals or sending these signals, I think for me that's what I'm saying. Unfortunately, I think that is the overzealousness I'm saying. Calm down, wait for the constitutional time frame to expire, to lapse, take over office, form the cabinet, and then stop throwing these jabs that you're no longer useful. It's not right. It's not right.
You know, I can forgive my friend John, who, like me, is just a communicator. He's a layman in terms of the law. But I'm actually baffled by Ekuro Okot,
constitutional lawyer.
Constitutional lawyer and the father of this constitution. You know, when he comes on national television, and instead of pointing at an illegality or flouting of the constitution, he's more concerned about matters of style, not the substance. You know, look, there's nothing, flamboyance is not a crime in this constitution. If we want to be flamboyant in the way we approach our things. And now, we even move further and make matters worse by mixing two issues. The issues of assumption of office right now. If there's anything you can accuse us of, it's style, not substance. Because you cannot point at a single law or a single part of the constitution that we have broken. First of all, have we done any gazettement of any appointments or anything? Is there any power that we have exercised against the constitution? No. We respect the law and we respect the constitution. Now, when we come to the matters of guys who are actually resigning, it is the constitution which you give us and which we are grateful to you.
Tell me which part of the constitution.
Which the Attorney General, the government's chief advisor, has disagreed.
Cite for me the part of the constitution.
Is it constitutional to hold two offices?
No, cite for me the part of the constitution that says.
That's not the matter. You know, look,
cite.
Again, I said I'm a communicator.
Cite for me.
I'm a communicator.
I'm here to correct you.
And you know very well that
I remember
the constitution is very clear. You cannot be a minister and a governor at the same time.
Cite for me a part of the constitution that says today, today somebody must resign. You know, read for me. Read out loud.
No, let's go to the issue of state officers.
Kibe is on it. Kibe, just give us a direction.
No, when it comes to the law, it's an away game for me. Yeah? So let our Kiri help us.
Yes,
I can actually be able to confirm.
You're probably talking about Article 75.
Yes, and
277.
And is aware of it, that one cannot be able pay 77. You can actually not hold two positions. We have the principle of separation.
Please read it out.
No. Let's go systematically. The position is this. Under the constitutions of Kenya, that was the whole idea why you are separating the presidents. We will not be having ministers drawn from parliament. There you have the doctrine of separations of powers. When you are a minister, from the time when we did the election, you are not a member of parliament, so that you cannot be at parliament at the same time when you are in the cabinet.
That's true.
But so that when the communication is being made, and you are told that if you are a minister and you are about to be sworn, then you cannot be sworn when you are still minister to be a member of parliament. It's an issue of common sense, and a senior lawyer like Mutula Kilonzo said, we all know it. So that actually anybody fighting it, you actually feel sad at those people, and you wonder what is all the hullabaloo all about. But there is a point of substance about what they were quarreling about. The truth of God is this, that after the Section 7 and Section 3 of the 6th schedule actually requires that the transition mechanism was going to proceed. The old executive, where you had the president and the prime minister, was going to continue until the first general elections was held. So that as of 4th of March this year, the old president as the old president ceased to exist. The prime minister as prime minister, and Nyachai is right, ceased to exist. So that the president's position changes to the president under Article 134. So that he becomes a temporary incumbent president, subject to the restrictions that my brother Ekuru was talking about. So that even when today you allow Prime Minister Raila Odinga to continue acting as Prime Minister actually is just by grace of interpretation. Under the Constitution of Kenya, he has ceased to be
Can
Prime
I correct?
Minister.
Please.
And that is
As you
the
can
truth.
see, as you can
Okay?
see,
Yes.
And therefore, because I don't know what is itching him, he talked without us talking. So that the talking about accommodation, the national accord is over.
it's
But
not.
because for politically,
It's not.
it may not be easy to tell them that this is the correct interpretation of the law. You let it be for the next 2 weeks before we carry the
Okay.
swearing-in ceremony.
Okay,
But as a matter of fact, that one is over. People will be sworn into offices, and the president is a temporary incumbent, and it is by the constitutions that his tenure has been taken to the date of the swearing-in.
just like to ask one
There is
thing.
no similar provisions that extend the tenure of the prime minister.
Okay,
I just
keep
like
it-
to ask,
This is a very
I just like to ask one
accommodating
thing before Ekuro answers.
Yeah.
Which government is in charge right now?
The government that
I'll
is
explain
in
to you.
charge is a government of the former president whose term has been extended until the swearing in by an express provisions of the constitutions.
Right.
Okay.
Article 134.
First of all,
Yes.
I'm not going to just second guess on what the law says. As you can see, Kibe is hard pressed to read to the public and this country what provision of the constitution is relying on to mislead Kenyans.
But I've just talked about 3 and 12.
Allow me to read the transitional provision of this constitution, because that's what is in operation right now. He's talking about a substantive provision of the constitution to be implemented by a president. Section 12 of the 6th schedule to this constitution, which is what ushers us into the new order. And I speak here authoritatively because we crafted this constitution. And section 12 says this: the persons, not the person, the persons occupying the offices of president and prime minister. Is that plural enough? Do you want me to go further than that? I'm not talking about person. And that's the law. Unless this law, and let me tell you, just for the avoidance of doubt.
Let him
And we
read
talked
it
about-
quickly, the entire section.
Yes, I will
without
read.
any-
Stop being agitated, because let's read the law. Let's read the law. It says the persons occupying the offices of president and prime minister immediately before the effective date shall continue, it's even mandatory, shall continue to serve as president and prime minister respectively in accordance with the former constitution. Now, the former constitution refers to the National Accord and Reconciliation Act of 2008 until the first general election.
Which
Now,
was held
fine.
on 4th of
So,
March.
what Kibe should be telling us, but let me explain to you. You're talking about interpretation, okay? As a lawyer, you ought to know that there is what is called purposive interpretation of the law or the constitution. Now, when he says Kibaki or the old president, yeah, shall be a caretaker president, effectively what he's telling us is that even Kibaki right now should vacate the office, because there is no way in this constitution that supports Kibaki any further retention going by his argument. All I'm saying is this: there is nothing wrong with a president-elect being declared. Let's follow the mechanisms, the traditions we have given ourselves in the constitution. Let's not interpret the law in a very selective manner. When a lawyer like Kibe, who I think I respect tremendously, talks of just one, even fails to tell Kenyans that the plurality in the constitution, for me it's a bit disappointing.
I want to point something about the transitional process, with all due respect.
Yes, sir.
And there was this argument when we were appointing the first Chief Justice. And there was actually a clash between the transitional clauses and the substantive constitution.
That's true.
And the transitional clauses were very clear that the president had the power to appoint the Chief Justice. But the substantive was about the process that we actually finally followed. And you guys trashed the transitional clauses when it suited you. Okay? Now that it doesn't suit you, go back to transitional clauses. Can you explain that inconsistency?
No,
Let us read to Kenyans what the law says, Article
Yes.
134.
Go
A
ahead.
person who holds the office of the president or who is authorized in terms of these constitutions to exercise the powers of the president, A, during a period commencing on the date of the first vote in a presidential election, that means 4th of March, and ending when the newly elected president assumes office. We don't know that date. While the president is absent or incapacitated, may not exercise the powers of the president specified in a certain clause. Now that
That's a
person
substantive
who
constitution.
was a substantive part of the constitutions, the sections is called exercise of presidential power during temporary incumbency.
Yeah.
That person is by name is President Mwai Kibaki.
Yeah.
That is a substantive provisions of the constitutions that allows him to continue being president of Kenya, subject to certain limitations until the swearing in.
Gentlemen,
and thereby
hang on.
Completely wrong.
Gentlemen, we can read this constitution back and forth. Yes. You can read it from the top to the end, you know, flip it and read whatever. But the question is, tonight, Kenyans are waiting 2 weeks or so. We'll have dealt with the matters that are in court. Kibe. So the question is, at what point do you want our ministers to vacate office? When they're being sworn in? Should we have a good transition of them saying, fine, this is the day the court has decided, we're going to be sworn in as senators, as governors, or whoever the next day, so we leave office? Or do you want them to say, well, today, I am to like Lonzo resign, tomorrow, Otangula resign, the other day, they resign from all over. What is the decorum?
No, the resignation is by operation of law. And by operation of law, it means if you are two things. Number one, if you are appointed as if you are elected and you are going to occupy another office on the date that you are supposed to assume that other office, which is inconsistent with you being a minister, then you must cease to be a minister, because by your own volitions you decided to be a governor, a senator, or other things. Number two, for the rest of the ministers, they continue being ministers until the new president is sworn in. Because let us remember,
they continue being ministers.
They continue being ministers, yes. The rest of them. Until the new president, if you are not, you do not have in a conflict situations, you remain minister until the new president is sworn in. Therefore, there is no gap.
Can I bring the point?
Before you go to the communicators,
Yes.
before you go to communicators, first of all, I'm still very saddened that a senior lawyer like Kibe can mislead Kenyans. Let's go back to Article 134, the one that he's quoting. And it says, exercise of presidential powers during temporary incumbency. Okay? And this is what the Constitution says. A person who holds the office of president or who is authorized in terms of this Constitution to exercise the powers of the president during the period commencing on the date of the first vote in a presidential election. This is an omnibus provision. It's not specific to this election. And ending when the newly elected president assumes office. Let's stop there. Has any new president assumed office? How do you assume office? You only assume office when you've been sworn in. When you have taken oath of office. Wait,
there's no contradiction.
While the president is absent, or incapacitated, or at other times contemplated in Article 147, may not. It says may not exercise, and that's what he did not read the Kenyan. May not exercise the powers of the president specified in a clause 2. So it's a negative.
I think I talked about limitations.
What limitation?
Talking about the period.
James.
Yes.
Do you know what this? Do you know what this whole argument is doing?
Let's read the law properly.
Ekuro, you've watched other democracies in which a president is elected. There's a president-elect and there's an existing president who will hand over office when the other one is sworn in. Now, in the Kenyan situation, and I keep going back to the same time frame we were given, within this period in which we are going through a transition, in which we might end up with the verdict of the IEBC being upheld or overturned, we have a situation in which Kenyans are in, and all these arguments, as healthy as they are, they're actually, the people who are actually charged with managing this transition, I think are doing a very poor job. One, delineation of government. There is a coalition government. There is a government in waiting subject to what the Supreme Court will decide. Is there a difference? Psychologically, when you watch what my friend Moses is scripting out for the public, is there a difference in the public mind that there is a president called Mwai Kibaki, a prime minister called Raila Odinga, and there is someone who has been declared by the IEBC to be victorious in an election, and we are still heading towards a petition process, after which and only after which can we confirm how the transition shall be completed. So in the communication that we are getting right now, and with all these arguments being bandied about, you almost start getting the idea that the coalition government has been dissolved. One, you have Kimemia contradicting the government's chief legal advisor, who's the AG. We can't see the president himself, and the statements now being issued are making the public start to question, is Kibaki still president, or is Uhuru an extension of Kibaki's presidency? Because there's supposed to be a clear delineation between an incoming, a waiting, a sitting president, a sitting government. So in my mind, all these arguments are healthy. But in terms of how we are communicating to the public, what are we actually saying? Who is government right now?
Naapa kwamba nitatenda kazi zangu za urais wa Jamhuri ya Kenya kwa uaminifu
Alright, so now here's the background to that story. Well, that was the first time that President Mwai Kibaki, President-elect then, got state security and state vehicles was the day he was being sworn in, not before that. Well, he drove in that vehicle, came to Uhuru Park, then you know what happened. Those pictures that we'll be showing as the show continues, I show later how the former President Moi leaves State House, gets in a chopper, and as we know, the rest became history. That's how we handed over government in 2002. What's this for you, quickly? Is that how we're going to do this time?
I think there were lessons which were learned from that transition, and that is why the Constitution and the laws provided for specific improvements to ensure that we don't...
Away from the Constitution, Moses,
yeah.
we talk about Constitution and laws and so much, but we're the same people, generally. The way I treat you, I don't need a Constitution to tell me that I should not hit you, Moses.
I thought that all our problems was because of our Constitution and the laws.
Of course not.
And these guys said, "No, let's change them." And now, what we are doing now... all I'm saying is, if you don't follow the Constitution, it's a sin. If you follow the Constitution, it's a sin. That's why I'm complaining that we never get it right. You know? Because now what we are doing now is saying, look, we don't know what is right and what is wrong. What we are doing is following the spirit and the letter of the law and the Constitution. I point to one thing that you are getting wrong. Let our learned friends here tell us, this is not going right. So I think the assumption of office in terms of the Act was made very clear to ensure that we have got a smooth transition. And I don't say that we're going to do it right or wrong. All I can say is that we are going to do it according to the law and the Constitution.
Can I answer something to
right,
just...
Yes, ambling pictures for you playing at the other side of the screen. That is President Mwai Kibaki now entering State House for probably the very first time, if you like. And before that was President Moi being handed over his flag, if you like, at the cabinet grounds. And those pictures will continue playing for you there on the end of the screen. But
let's face it, James. There was nothing constitutionally wrong with the way the 2002 swearing-in ceremony or handover was done. But let's face it, it was about 6 hours of very bad manners from Kenyans about how they would handle a state function. And so the drafters of the new constitution made sure that not only would we have a clear picture about how to do things, but I think the spirit of it was how we would behave in that process. And I think that is one thing I'm trying to look at, in the sense of, you can actually not say this an illegality, this is what, but we are in a country right now that is undergoing a very tense moment. Let's face it, after this election. And the thing is, people are nerves afraid, or people are apprehensive, or nobody's really exactly sure how this is going to pan out because there's a court process happening. What will be good manners to do right now is, how do you be sensitive in a process like this and carry people through, especially when you just come from an election. And this is why I was still criticizing the transition team, in the sense of 14 million Kenyans just participated in a democratic exercise. You do not shunt them aside and in 30 people sit down in a room and suddenly surprise you with an event every day with an explanation in the evening, and an event every day and an explanation in the evening, when you are that process is still not being exhausted, especially now that there's a court process involved. One of the things I think is, Kenyans, this is what you should expect. This is what the law says, this is what we will do. Secondly, it would be nice if the main players in this particular drama of the last 2 weeks would actually sit back and say, based on the mood of the country and where the country is, let's carry the country this way through a delicate process and a delicate moment. That's all I'm talking about, Moses. I'm not actually saying...
Let me assume for one strange moment that you are right. What would you want us to do different?
One of the things is this. I'll ask you, Moses. We are actually placing the country, based on the overzealousness that he talked about, in a bit of an embarrassing position. Let me give you an example. The diplomats paying homage to the president-elect. There are civil servants doing the same thing. Briefings happening. So, what you are not doing is preparing the country to conclude a process. Because I'll tell you this. If by any chance, or if the Supreme Court invalidates that election and President-elect Uhuru becomes candidate Uhuru, one, you have to deal with this. Two, you have to deal with all these things that have been done with the presumption that this is actually a final result. And if you ask me, basically with regard to being sensitive to a country at this point in time, that's what I'm saying I wish you do.
So just a minute, Doctor. Because we've agreed it's not about the law. We have agreed that we are doing everything according to the law and the Constitution, so relax on that. So what John
is actually talking about the spirit of the Constitution.
We have not gotten somewhere.
What's your question?
What's your question? So what you will not want us to do is to receive visitors. What you will not want us to do is to visit the country and look at development projects. Is that the problem?
No. You know, I'm dealing with a very serious issue and you're trivializing it.
There is something here,
yes.
And which is this, that when you have some inarticulate premises which you are not stating, like for example, the law says that you should be provided with security. Security is being provided. The law says that the president-elect can receive certain information, from public officials, and can receive security briefings. That is a law that says that. When I listen to Nyongesa, there seems to be some problem with that. And the problem is, for the time being, it is not a problem per se for the president-elect Uhuru. The problem appears to be any person who, for the time being, may be uncomfortable with that. Because by trying to project this forward and say that if and when President Uhuru, assuming that for some moment that the Supreme Court allows that petition and he becomes candidate Uhuru, that is something for Uhuru to be concerned about. You cannot say that the current problems where you are uncomfortable with it, you claim, you try to seek support for the suspected discomfort that Uhuru may suffer in the future. That's not an accurate answer.
Let me say this. We all may have been born at night, but I don't think we were born last night. Certainly not. I think we've lived in this country. One of the problems in this country, and especially emanating from people who want to be associated with political power, is the manner in which people suck up to whoever they think has power. They do things, sometimes even hurting society or sending wrong signals. And I'm happy there are two very serious communicators here. I mean, who in my view, I think, understand what we are saying. I may not understand better what communication is and Kuria and Nyongesa do. But I think when you send certain signals to society, and coming back to your point, that we are still one nation, let's have some, there are certain steps in which we must follow. Even if today I'm president-elect, I think for me, this country is still in a very sensitive moment. As you very well know that, I think one of the problems I have with Kenya generally is that we suffer from a culture of very chronic short memory. We forget too soon. We forget that not long ago, our political formations were based on tribe, based on numbers, based on regions, based on who you are. And therefore that has created a level of sensitivity. It balkanized us. So the manner in which we behave towards a transition, for me, is very important. Because like we used to say, I mean, during this election, fourth will come, we still have a country. We still be Kenyans. So the manner in which we behave ourselves towards this transition is also very important. And let's not trivialize it by saying, oh, what is it that I've done wrong? The way, listen, I'm not saying, listen, nobody has even accused you of doing anything wrong. All we are saying is, kuna utaratibu. There is a manner in which
na kuna sheria inayotaja huo utaratibu.
It's true. Kuna sheria, lakini pia hiyo sheria inasema tusi over exaggerate.
You claim to be the fact that has won.
Yes.
And the question is, we know how the elections went. 6 million, 5 million. Give or take, half of the country did not vote for you.
Yes.
How are you communicating with them? What are you telling them?
I think that's a very good question. You know, winning has a good feeling, but it comes with responsibility. And we are cognizant of the fact that we have got a responsibility to behave in a sensitive way because we still have some people who lost and who are still wounded. That's a fact. But you cannot legislate feelings. And you cannot legislate how you carry out yourself. And you cannot have a gauge of passionometer or something like that. And this is the level of passion.
Moses is not being very
let me say this.
He's not being.
Look,
But
these guys.
just a point of order. Just a point of order.
I didn't interrupt.
Kuria, you will speak. I think Kuria, let's be honest. In a democracy, there are no losers, there are no winners. We're talking about representative democracy, but go on. I just wanted to correct you on that.
You know, let us not start twisting law when it suits us. When we say, oh, we are following the law, no, all about feelings, all about passion. Now, when it suits us, we disregard the law. Take the issue of now the people resigning, and we have demonstrated here very eloquently. When God feels that, do you know something? How is it that 13 ministers, cabinet ministers, full ministers of God have to resign against only 5 for Jubilee? Because they know what they did to entrench themselves through unfair nominations, and therefore they are now coming to pay for it. Now, if a cabinet meeting is called,
I think we're digressing.
it is only Kalonzo, Ntimama, and Gumu who will attend cabinet on behalf of God. And I know that's a painful thing, but that's the law. That's foreign.
But we are digressing. First of all,
I think
this is not a Jubilee or CORD affair.
Hang on.
This conversation is about Jubilee or CORD.
As we move forward, removing Jubilee or CORD.
Yes.
Learning from these experiences, from this first election, in this new constitutional dispensation, Kibe, what have we carried forward in the next 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years, when you will be sitting probably back at home, not working as a city lawyer? Would you be proud of what you're showing now?
10 years?
No, 50 years.
Most likely a city lawyer still. or the same. I believe for purposes of this transition was always going to have its own odd moments. And these odd moments were likely to arise if a result that went contrary to opinion polls, like this one has happened, came out of the elections of 4th of March. And therefore, a bit of this discomfort that is taking place, there is nothing surprising I see with it. But the good thing is, and I had said that in my opening remarks, that we expect that in the next elections, all this will not be there, because there will be no sixth schedule. The sixth schedule is about to die when we do the swearing in, and it has been a point of contention. But finally, and I think this is something that people should try to take with some grace, Barack Obama likes saying it as often as he can, that elections have consequences. Okay? I can understand when Moses Kuria is saying one of the consequences in our democratic elections is that you presented your agenda to the people, and in this case by a big majority, have said that they follow your agenda. So there is also an obligation, not just on those who have won an election, but those who have lost an election in a resounding manner, to accept that there is a new reality, and that reality is legitimate as it has come from the votes of the people. Let us remember that the president is the only official in our country whom all of us elect. And therefore, the fact to say that somebody is a president-elect, it's something that counts for something. We cannot be able to dictate to the president that this is the manner in which you are going to behave, because the people decided it's him. It's a good thing. Probably someday we might have President Smart. It would be a nice thing.
Not too far. John?
No, a quick one. I understand what he's saying. But you see, what I'm saying is that our communication should entrench to the public that we have a process we do believe in. And what is our process? Again, I keep coming back to very basic things. You have an election. If that election is unchallenged, you have a swearing in. You have an election. If that election is challenged, you have a petition. You either can reaffirm whatever IBC declared and you have a swearing in, or you can override it and have an election. With all these very basic factors in mind, I would want to think that the players in this particular scenario would actually walk a divided country, a polarized country, you would say, through this process with the decorum it deserves. That's exactly what I'm saying.
I'm hoping that moving forward, I'm hoping that a lot of us will drop our chauvinistic or level of arrogance that we exhibit right now, especially when you assume that the country just appears to belong to you because you're in a certain advantage position. I want to still repeat that in an election, there are no losers, there are no winners. We all participate in a process, and in that process, whoever has been declared the winner must then carry the country along with him. And even the people, the handlers of whoever is been elected the winner, must behave in a certain way. I think for me, I hope that we will inculcate a culture in which we behave ourselves in a certain way, or we find to communicate to the country in a certain way to lessen the tensions. Because the truth be told, we can only pretend today, because you're probably in an advantage position, that you know, other people do not matter. I think for me that is some of the signals there, and especially listening to my friend Kibe Mungai, he seems to carry that a lot. He seems to have as a feeling that it does not matter what other people feel. I think it should matter. It should matter in this country. No, let me just say, I think it should matter. When you listen to it, I mean, you can try and sugarcoat what you are saying, and like I say, you know, we need to be sensitive how we communicate, because this country is still very fragile, if you ask me. And I think the manner in which we communicate, we carry ourselves, you know, you don't have to, you know, people say that a picture speaks 1,000 whatever words, but the way in which you carry yourself, your demeanor, your character, you know, I think for me tells a lot. And I will be careful, you know, how I do things, because I still think my good friend Moses Kuria and Kibe and Nyongesa are still equal citizens of this country. The fact that one has emerged the winner in an election should not be used either to disparage others or to demean. We still have this country, and for me, as a matter of fact, it may not matter to all of us who becomes the president, so long as nobody disrupts the environment within which we make our living. And that for me is what is important.
I think I want to say something for record. That maybe there is confusion when people see the president and the deputy president to be, you know, going out there and waving to people on motorcade. They think it's show off. And I want to repeat again, it's not within the DNA of Jubilee to show off. I shudder with fear. I shudder with fear to imagine if the shoe was on the other.
As a matter of fact, we're showing off right now.
No, we are humble. Humility is part of our DNA, I'm telling you. But that humility cannot be confused to mean that we are going to sit back and not go and reassure the people of this country that once our victory is reaffirmed, that we have an agenda for this country. We cannot abrogate that right to other people. Neither can we cede it away or write it away. So let us be very clear. Humility does not equal to us abdicating our responsibility. Okay? We have a responsibility for people who voted for us. We have an obligation to those people who did not vote for us. We do understand really that we need to carry everybody forward. And I think within the next 10 or so days, when our victory is reaffirmed, you shall see that we are going to work for people who voted for us as much as people who didn't vote for us. And that is what is called uniting the country. It's not about feelings and behavior.
All right.
And we all try not to be bitter as we move forward.
Not about feelings or behavior. That's what Moses says. But on KTN Livewire, it's not all about doom and gloom. Here now, I'd like to play you a sensational clip coming from Uganda, and I'll translate it for you. Take a look at this.
Laga Queenie, Lucy Down. Selector Didi, take you. Abasajja amatukola bubinyo, ebyennyanja okubitunda ebweru, empuuta okugitunda ebweru, ebyennyanja okubitunda awutu. Songa ennyanja bya bannayuganda, ebyennyanja bya bannayuganda. Bannayuganda bali abiri baliwa, bannayuganda abesingo bali abiri baliba abenatete bali abigumbagumba abejinja bali abiri baliba abebombo bali abigumbagumba punto kujitunda bweru ebyenyanja bitunda bweru ezo sente ezotunda mu byenyanja ziyamba makago bannayuganda tezituyamba abannayuganda batezituyamba songa ennyanja y'abannayuganda n'ebyennyanja by'abannayuganda uganda bali abiri baliba bannayuganda bali abigumbagumba punto kuyitunda ebweru ebyennyanja kubitunda awutu ebyennyanja kubitunda ebweru n'empunto kugitunda ebweru bannayuganda bali abiri baliba bannayuganda bali abigumbagumba abebombo bali abiri baliba abesingo bali abigumbagumba empunto kugitunda ebweru ebyennyanja kubitunda ebweru bannayuganda tezituyamba abannayuganda batezituyamba songa ennyanja y'abannayuganda ebyennyanja by'abannayuganda bannayuganda bali abiri baliba abesingo bali abiri baliba abebombo bali abigumbagumba empunto kugitunda ebweru n'ebyennyanja kubitunda awutu ezo sente ezotunda mu byennyanja ziyamba makago abannayuganda tezituyamba abannayuganda batezituyamba empunto kugitunda ebweru n'ebyennyanja kubitunda bannayuganda bali abiri baliba bannayuganda bali abigumbagumba abebuddo bali abiri baliba emasaka bali abigumbagumba abebombo bali abiri baliba
All right, so here's the translation. Mama Lucy Ntambi, if you like, she says, very simply, it's a political statement that they fish in Uganda, a lot of fish, but the fish is caught, taken elsewhere, eaten there, then the bones are brought back for Ugandans to eat. Well, hopefully that will not happen in Kenya in the next dispensation, if you like. We'd like to eat the fish and take the bones elsewhere. You've been watching KTN Livewire. My name is James Smart.